Okay. All right, I'm back. So, you may or may not know this, but I recently posted a video to YouTube, and the video was about a very powerful dream that I had. It's a follow-up to another dream that I had earlier in the year, actually late last year, and it feels like it's a follow-up to that dream. It's the same dream, and if you go to my YouTube channel, which is you can just search for Michael Allen Ellis, and that'll take you to my YouTube channel on YouTube. And it's this prophetic dream for May, the end of May, beginning of June, in which I saw rising sea levels. Now, um, just to let you know a little bit about this, after I shot that video and posted it, it's been like 4 or 5 days, and it's got way over 1,000 hits and some pretty positive comments. People have mentioned that it sounds a lot like what has been written of by uh, he's like a computer programmer. His name is Cliff High, and I've come across some references to Cliff High before, but I've never actually read any of his stuff in depth. I really have never listened to any of his recordings that he's made. But excuse me, hay fever. Spring is here. Excuse me. Um, so I never read anything or listened to anything that was done by Cliff High until after somebody posted a comment on this video saying, "Hey, this sounds a lot like what Cliff High is talking about." So I subsequently watched some of his videos, listened to some of his audios, and read some of his stuff. I went to his website, and it's true. He does describe an event that seems to sound, and the timing seems to be exactly what I was dreaming about. Excuse me. I'm sorry. That was kind of gross. Anyway, so there's some differences. I don't necessarily agree that this is going to be completely devastating. He seems to believe this is going to set back, it's like maybe 10 years, 20 years it's going to take to rebuild. And that's, what is it? You ate all of your melon. That's great. That's great. It's my son over there. And, but I don't necessarily think that it's going to be this total catastrophic disaster. At least not to the point where I think it's going to be the thing that causes like a collapse of civilization. Um, I think that it's going to be bad in some areas and not as bad in others. And I feel it's going to be gradual. It's going to probably take, a couple weeks. And Cliff also mentioned that he thinks it's going to be rapid, but it's going to happen over a period of days. And he even has he even subscribes to what he calls the expando planet theory. I've never heard it called that before. I heard it called the expanded planet or the expanding planet theory. But he even subscribes to that as well, and I think that that is actually um, a possibility. I think that's a possibility. It can explain a lot of what's going on with the planet right now. Um, the differences between what I believe and what he believes is that my belief comes from the fact that I've had some very compelling dreams and some very compelling visions that suggest to me that this thing is going to happen. Um, now, I'm not a prophet. I'm if anything, I am a psychic. I do give psychic readings to people. I do consultations for people and businesses, and to try to give them my intuitive insight into helping them live better lives and have a more effective business and I obviously do not want a huge disaster to happen because that would kind of throw my personal life into an uproar. And even though I live like a few hundred miles from the coast, so it wouldn't directly affect me. I do live in California, so even a minor disaster on the coast would have far-reaching impact for the entire state. In fact, it would probably have impact for the entire country. So I obviously do not want to see this happen. I hope it does not happen. And in fact, this may be a warning instead of an actual prediction. This may be a warning from collective consciousness. See, I believe that even though, as individuals, we have a lot of control over what happens in our life, I say that you create the reality that you experience in your life. However, you don't necessarily create all the events that happen to you in your life. And that might seem like a paradox, but human beings, each individual is not just an individual. We're also part of a group. We're also part of a species of consciousness, not just a species of animal, but we're also part of a species of consciousness. So what happens to you does not happen in a vacuum. What happens to you has an effect on you, your family, your friends, friends of friends, and even strangers. There is a ripple effect. Whatever happens to you has a ripple effect throughout all of humanity, and the closer people are to you, the greater the effect. The farther they are away from you, and I don't just mean geographically, I mean the farther they are away from you in affinity. If it's somebody that you know, something that happens to you is going to have a greater impact on somebody that you know, even if that person is halfway around the world, than somebody who doesn't know you at all. There will still be an impact, it just will not be as great. And these ripples are happening throughout the entire web of connections. We have these subtle connections with every other human being on the planet, and they connect each and every one of us. And when something happens to one, it happens to all. So this is the reason why I believe that these warnings are coming through. Not just to me, obviously, but to other people, other psychics, other researchers, people that are researching, earthquake frequency, and people that are researching sunspot activity and the sun's electromagnetic energy and how it's affecting the earth. These warnings, these messages are coming from many different areas, many different directions. And what are they saying? They're not saying this is inevitably going to happen. What they're saying is that this is what the collective unconscious is receiving. These are the images that are prevalent in the, well, I'm going to borrow a term from I don't I forgot who originally coined this. I'm going to have to do research, but there's a term for the world that is the non-physical world, and that term is the imaginal realm. The imaginal realm. Uh, the imagination gets kind of a bad rap. It's seen as not being real, but in point of fact, the imagination is real. It is its own world, is its own dimension, the imaginal dimension, the imaginal realm. Um, in its in its own way, it's a world as complete as the physical world. And as a matter of fact, human awareness would not be what it is if it wasn't for the fact that we are as aware of the imaginal realm as we are of the physical realm. In fact, our perception, the way we perceive the world, the way we perceive things as happening as a linear awareness of time, past, present, and future, that is caused by an interaction between the physical universe and this imaginal universe. What happens in the imaginal universe comes to pass in the physical universe. because the imaginal universe precedes the physical. The imaginal always precedes the physical. We imagine something to be true, and it has a tendency to become true. And that is the way of things in human life. We imagine ourselves to change, and then we change. We imagine the world to be different. We imagine an invention, or we imagine a house that we would like to build, or we imagine a car that we would like to design. And then, through the process of unfoldment, through the process of growth, through the process of attraction, the forces are marshaled that bring that imaginal object into the physical world. It doesn't just appear poof from nothing. It could, it could. There's nothing preventing that from happening except human belief. However, the way the laws of physics are set up and the way human awareness is set up, it's highly unlikely for those sort of things to just appear out of thin air. It does happen, just not very often. And here's where I'm going with this. Um, my son is in his bedroom, and he's playing on the computer, and he gets very frustrated. So you might be overhearing him kind of scream out and get all like, yeah. He's 6 years old, but he likes playing games on the computer and designing things on the computer that really the software is really designed for much older children, but that doesn't stop him from trying. But he gets frustrated. I don't stop him though. I don't stop him. I feel like you have to keep trying. You have to just allow people to try and get frustrated and either stop on their own or keep going. That's life. Just an aside, because in case you hear him screaming out in the background, that's the most likely reason why he's doing that. But as I was saying, human awareness is really about applying the knowledge that we have of our imagination and using that to structure the physical universe in the way that we desire it to be. Now, the problem is that the mass of humanity is not aware that that's how things work. The mass of humanity believe that physical events happen, and then we react to the physical events. And in point of fact, we imagine events to happen first in dreams, in visions, in fiction, in movies, in television. We think about it. We discuss things with friends and family, and there gets to be a almost a consensus of belief, and that consensus of belief will cause something to happen in the physical world. It's funny. Um, you don't see this as much now, but because it's 2013. But man, 2012 was the year of the zombie apocalypse. I mean, really, there were so many movies, so many TV shows, so much. I mean, even the government released stuff saying how to prepare for the zombie apocalypse. Much of it was tongue in cheek for entertainment value. It was to make money off of people. But what was it really doing? It was capitalizing off of this fear, off of this imaginary scenario that we've replayed so many times in media, in fiction, and on television. And we've replayed it and replayed it and replayed it. And it's even part of some people's spirituality that the dead will rise during, you know, the apocalypse, that the dead will rise. Now, it doesn't say anywhere that the dead will rise and begin to eat the living, but the point is that you say it enough times, people start thinking that this is a possibility. They start thinking this is a possibility, even though it's not possible. It's not possible. If the dead start rising from their graves, all bets are off. Then anything that then you can. If the dead start rising from their graves, then you better start looking around for fairies and unicorns and griffins to start flying through the air. All those things. All those things are part of the imaginal realm. but only certain things can come forward and manifest physically. Was there a time when most people believed in fairies, that you could see fairies and that they were physically, that they had an objective reality? I think that that's probably true. I think that at a time when belief in fairies, belief in ghosts, belief in demons was common, and people thought that they had actual um, physical form, that people would see them, people would meet them, they would seem physical, but they were still mostly part of the imaginal realm because they did not have a life outside of the belief of the humans that believed in them. Most creatures of the imaginal realm, fairies, ghosts, demons, angels, they exist in the imaginal realm. They are real in the imaginal realm. But because of their very nature, because of how we think of them, because we think of them as spiritual, because we think of them as magical, because we think of them as being beyond the physical, and you can apply this to UFOs and aliens as well. These creatures exist in the imaginal realm because we created them there, or we imagined them to be. We reinforce that imagination with continued stories and continued imagination. So they are now a permanent residence, permanent residence of the imaginal realm. They are there forever. It's like the internet. You put something on the internet, it's there forever. And you put something into the imaginal realm, and it's there forever. Now, we can bring things into our physical world from the imaginal realm, but they have to have a path for manifesting. There has to be a path for it to manifest into the physical world, and that path for manifesting always has to do with human action. Humans have to take action for things to manifest in the physical world. As I said, things don't just manifest out of thin air. Physical objects just don't manifest out of thin air, at least not not most of the time. Some people claim that they've seen that happen. Some very spiritual people claim that that's possible. I'm not going to say it's not possible. I'm just going to say that it doesn't happen most of the time for most people. And since it doesn't happen most of the time for most people, um, it would take a lot of evidence to show me that somebody could do that. If somebody could do that, please teach me how. Please teach me how, because I'd be manifesting gold and silver like crazy. Just right out of the air. Gold powder right out of the air. I know Sai Satya Baba says that he can do this. He's a mystic in India, and he travels the world and he produces gold jewelry from thin air and food from thin air. And people say that he's an enlightened being, and maybe he is. Maybe he is, or maybe he's just very good at uh, at stage magic. Either way, it doesn't matter. He's free to foster the belief that he wants to foster, and people are free to believe what they want to believe about him. I'm just going to say that most things manifest in this physical universe by way of human action, and at least most things that are put into the imaginal realm by human beings. And I can only think that humans are the only ones that really can put things into the imaginal realm, because the imaginal realm is part of us. We actually existed in the imaginal realm before we existed in the physical. The human being, the human form, existed in the imaginal realm, and through the desire to manifest physically, that's how the physical universe got to be. The physical universe came into being because the collective consciousness that was the imaginal realm, and that is the imaginal realm. The imaginal realm is not just a world, it is a consciousness. It is a force of life. It is life itself. It is life force itself. That is the imaginal realm. It is what drives the physical world. That is the energy and the power behind the physical world. The power that unites all the other forces is this consciousness. Consciousness is what makes up the imaginal realm, and the imaginal realm is what gives birth to the physical realm. So, many times sensitive people will be able to um, see things before they manifest, see things that are still in the imaginal realm before they manifest physically. Sometimes what we see in the imaginal realm manifests physically, sometimes it doesn't. But this event that I've been seeing, even if it doesn't happen physically, or even if the physical manifestation of it is not nearly as devastating or as destructive as I fear it may be, it will still have an impact. Things that happen in the imaginal realm have an impact on the human psyche, and that in turn has an impact on how human beings interact with each other. Again, as I was just saying, this whole zombie apocalypse thing. You go on the internet and there are hundreds of businesses that will happily sell you a zombie apocalypse survival kit. There are people stocking up on weapons that are not practical for defense except against zombies where you have to chop off their heads. And even though you go to these people and you go, well, they're not we're not really going to have to fight off brain-eating zombies. You know that, right? And they go, well, yeah, I know that, but it's kind of cool, and I can use it to defend against people if people attack me and they're not zombies, and you never know. You never know. That's a lot of people give that answer. You never know what might happen. But we're not. I mean, really, we're not going to have a zombie apocalypse. You know that. I know that. Um, and the thing is that it's amazing though how that um, how that thought form how that thought form spread and grew, and it spawned this whole technically I guess it's called a meme. This whole this, this whole conceptual structure now that people kind of subscribe to and say, "Ooh, look, there's another video on zombie apocalypse survival," and "Ooh, here's a movie coming out about the zombie apocalypse," and "Ooh, look, a comic book on zombies," and there's an entire zombie industry now. And why? Because somebody on some level, people fear death, and on some level, people fear the unknown, and on some level people are sensing that something has got to change, that we are reaching the end of the sustainability of the current model of how humanity organizes itself, this top down, a few people in charge at the top and everybody else has to follow the line and toe the line or else. That's not working for people anymore. It doesn't work for me anymore, and I don't know if it works for you anymore. But it just seems like that's not where the world is heading. We're heading in a new direction, and when people sense that things are about to change in a big way, I mean, actually, we've had a huge amount of change. The internet has spawned a huge amount of change, and that change has made people both hopeful and fearful because now we can conceive of things that we never could conceive of before. We can conceive of a future that maybe we never thought possible. Things are happening now that when I was a kid, people were saying, "Oh, maybe we'll have something like that in 50 to 100 years." Well, it's not. It hasn't been 50 years. It's been like 20, 25, maybe 30 years, and we're on the verge of like being able to totally replace body parts, just cloning body parts and replacing them, and conquering aging, and robots that are if not are self-aware, then are at least self-sufficient. Robots that have artificial intelligence that you can say go and do this, and they will go and do it, and they will understand what you say. Communication systems like the one that I'm using now that allows me to take my cell phone and record a video and have it go out live to the rest of humanity. I mean, in in theory, I don't know how many people are watching this right now, but in theory, there could be thousands of you watching me right now. And that's an incredible change in a infinitesimal small period of time. In less than a human life, in less than a generation, we have gone from black and white TVs to three-dimensional, high-definition, flat-screen televisions. We've gone from rotary dial telephones to devices the size of well, what's this, like the thickness of like a, actually it's like the size of a cigarette case, really, the size of a cigarette case, that can record high definition video, high quality audio, and send it in real time out to a worldwide network in which anyone can see it. That's just inconceivable. If it wasn't happening right now, it would be inconceivable for most people. Those are the changes. This is the reason why we have so many disasters, I think. So many disasters are happening now. And it's not just your imagination, it's not just my imagination. We're not just imagining it. It Our imagination is what causes them to happen, but it's not to say that it's only imagination. It's our imagination that forms the individual. Sorry, I'm walking over here. I just saw something go blowing past here, and I'm trying to figure out where it went. There it is. My child's toy. So, anyway, as I was saying, we have this situation where we imagine things, and we think that there's no ramifications to that. There's no, not ramifications, that's the wrong word. There's no consequence. We imagine things and we believe that there's no consequences to what we imagine. But our imagination creates the universe. So whatever we imagine has consequence. It affects us. It may not affect us fully in the physical world because we're not fully physical creatures. We are at least 50% imaginal ourselves. So whatever happens in the imaginal realm is going to affect us at least in our mood and in our demeanor and how we interact with each other and how we decide that we're going to live our lives. You know, we don't have to have a huge coastal disaster for people to still feel like a disaster has happened. And I know that that's not going to make logical sense. But even if everybody were to dream and have dreams of like a coastal disaster, and even if it didn't happen, even if it didn't physically happen, something else would be created from it. Something else would be created from it. Maybe a movie would come out that is detailing this coastal disaster. And for all I know, that might be what I'm dreaming of. I'm dreaming of what will end up being the plot of a movie. You know, what a lot of people don't understand is that things can be um, thought of and imagined, and they can seem like they are prophecies. They can seem like they're premonitions. Just because they don't happen in the physical world doesn't mean that the premonition wasn't true, that it didn't have an effect or an impact in the physical world. Like I said, you could have a dream of an earthquake, and the earthquake may not actually happen, but enough people may have had that same dream or that same vision that it caused somebody to write a novel about a great earthquake that happens, and the aftermath of it and what happens, and maybe that novel gets turned into a movie, and maybe millions of people see that movie and realize, you know what, that we can't allow that to happen. So what we need to do is we need to go out and we need to make our structures on the coasts, on coastal areas, stronger, or we need to make sure that there's adequate early warning signs to evacuate people in case something like this ever does happen. So there's many different ways that things that seem like a prophecy of physical destruction can still come true without causing actual physical destruction. There's always a deeper reality. there's this deep reality that I call the imaginal realm, and that's where everything that we are comes from. Everything that we are comes from that deep imaginal realm. And sometimes it manifests physically, other times it manifests as a change in behavior, a change in our emotional context. It may change the way that we relate to each other. It may spawn a social movement or a religious movement or a new spiritual idea. Even though it doesn't physically happen, it only happens in the imaginal realm. The the more people that experience that in the imaginal realm, the more likely that something will happen in the physical that gives birth to that. And like I said, if there is enough energy in human thought that makes it so that we react in fear, like if we react in fear to things that we observe in the imaginal realm, and understand that we create things that happen in the imaginal realm. So the fact that I'm seeing this disaster happening means that there are a significant number of people that are afraid of something like this happening, and that think about something like this happening on a daily basis. This type of situation is how things end up coming into the physical realm. When you concentrate on something, when you focus on something, whether it's positive or negative, it will bring it to fruition in the physical realm. So that's how these things work. So if we look at these things that we believe, if we look at excuse me, now my son's singing, so I have to go someplace else. I came outside so that I could have some quiet, and even outside, my son's voice, he takes after me. He loves to sing and he's very loud. So, anyway, wrapping up, I'm just going to wrap this up really quick. Um, if you react to, it's a feedback loop. Let me start from there. It's a feedback loop. We have we observe rapid change in our environment, and that causes anxiety among many people. Rapid change, people don't know what's going to happen. People don't know how they're going to adapt and how they're going to cope, so that causes anxiety. Anxiety is a feeling of fear and a feeling of not being sure about what the next step is. So anxiety can cause us to think about negative things. So if you have a millions of people that have a general sense of anxiety, this general sense of anxiety will tend to start manifesting as physical disasters, earthquakes,